Venezuela's economic crash. Venezuela has been experiencing the most serious political and economic crisis for decades. Severe food and drug shortages, increased crime rates and the government's oppression on the opposition led to widespread protest. The country's economy is expected to shrink by 10.1% this year from 5.7% in 2015, and this is the worst performance among the economies watched by the World Bank. According to a recent survey, inflation is around 720%, and 76% of Venezuelans live below the poverty line and rise to 52% of the population by 2014. The criticism of President Nicolas Maduro and former founder Hugo Chávez is the fruit of years of economic mismanagement of Venezuela's economic crisis. Situated above the world's largest oil reserves, the country sees significant reductions in oil revenues as oil prices fall and production falls. Meanwhile, drought has consumed most of the dams of the country and suffered electrical disturbances. An oil-based economy, years of dependence on oil exports negatively affected other sectors of the Venezuelan economy and were particularly vulnerable to external shocks. According to the 2015 data prepared by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, oil accounts for about 95% of Venezuela's export earnings and 25% of the GDP of the country. State-run oil company Petróleos de Venezuela, S.A. PDVSA supervises the entire oil exploration, processing and exportation of Venezuela. Critics say PDVSA has been largely misguided, showing a lack of chronicle, an inflated billboard, insufficient investment in infrastructure, and lack of budget oversight. Petroleum production fell by an average of 2.78 million barrels a day in 2015, and nearly 11% a day in May 2016. By the end of 2015, when global oil prices fell to more than $111 per barrel, Venezuela's already shaky economy went into free fall. Oil revenue was the cornerstone of Chávez's social programs and petrol diplomacy. During his presidency, Chávez expanded control over the oil giant from 1999 to 2013 and used it to fund training programs for food and housing subsidies, health services and the poor. Chávez used these oil wealth to bolster Venezuela's international relations by selling oil to Venezuela's longtime ally Cuba, as well as 18 members of the Petro-Caribbean Alliance, including the Dominican Republic, Haiti and Nicaragua, with steep discounts. Venezuela is meeting 5% of its annual average GDP growth between 2005 and 2012, when oil prices more than doubled. However, when global oil prices fell below $40 per barrel by the end of 2015, global oil prices fell below $40 at the end of 2015, while Venezuela's already shaken economy fell into free fall. Until the middle of 2016, the country had $120 billion in borrowings from foreign lenders and reserves about $12 billion fell. Although Maduro's administration cut imports, sold gold, and fulfilled debt obligations up to now, Venezuela's high levels of debt would reveal a default fear. Price controls, famine. Venezuela's economic crisis is manifested by the inadequacy of consumer goods such as food, currency, medical supplies and toilet paper and soap. Experts say that Venezuela will be accused of many economic policies, such as tight price controls, which mean that basic commodities keep the country affordable to the poor. Limitations of what producers could pay for goods led many producers in the country to reduce production. By 2015, 1,200 private enterprises in Venezuela were nationalized by experts as they suffered more productivity losses. The Chávez administration has provided dollars at different rates, allowing some companies and individuals access to the dollars, and therefore imported at preferential rates. Artificially low official exchange rate and dollar and commodity caused the land market. Maduro's administration has simplified the exchange rate somewhat in the middle of 2016, but the official exchange rates of the country are still different. The official exchange rate is 10 bolivars against the dollar, but the more accurate black market rate is the bolivar over $1 since the middle of 2016. As bolivar depreciated against the US dollar and fell to its lowest level in 12 years, imports, including drugs and food, became increasingly expensive. Many consumers are faced with the option of waiting hours for essential commodities or paying exorbitant prices by so-called bachucaros or black market traders. According to a government report, the infant mortality rate in hospitals rose to 2% in 2015, from 0.02% in 2012. Venezuela's troubles turned to the health sector, and the Venezuelan Pharmaceutical Federation reported that in April, 80% of essential drugs could not be used. According to a government report, the infant mortality rate in hospitals rose to 2% in 2015, from 0.02% in 2012. Local health NGOs say that Venezuela has not reported much of the mosquito-borne disease Zika virus cases linked to birth defects. In addition, the malaria and dengue humus is increasing and the pressure on the poor health system is increasing. Meanwhile, a long-suffering drought dried up water resources used for the Venezuelan dams that supply 2/3 of the country's electricity. In May, Venezuela shortened the working hours of its public sector employees to 2 days to cope with energy shortages. Most of the country is allocated water and electricity. Poverty increased. The Chávez administration stressed the redistribution of wealth, and poverty fell from about 50% to about 30% between 1998 and 2012, when Chávez was first elected. However, these gains were reversed until 2016. 87% of the population said they do not have enough money to buy enough food, according to the local university. The Caracas-based Documentation and Social Analysis Center reported that in April 2016, the monthly food basket price adjusted for inflation was more than 16 times the monthly minimum wage. Political turmoil. In December 2015, the opposition MP won the majority of Congress for the first time in 16 years. The convention is a move approved by a referendum in April 2016 to place Maduro in their place and described by the president's supporters as a parliamentary strike. International observers have explained that the Maduro administration has taken several steps, including monitoring the economy, which is the legislative body to abuse the Congress, and lifting an amnesty law to liberate 80 political entities, including the opposition, using loyal courts to Maduro. Maduro, despite international criticism in May 2016 and calling for the administration to allow a referendum, has declared a state of emergency for 60 days and accused the United States of making the coup plot. Ruling members were in talks this month to end political stability with mediators and opposition leaders in the Dominican Republic. Opposition groups accuse the government of using it to stop recalling negotiations. Venezuela's neighbors have come together with opposition leaders who will say that some experts will be prepared for leadership change. Venezuela's largest creditor, China, reportedly has renegotiated billions of dollars in loans with the South American country. In June 2016, China sent an informal embassy to Venezuela to meet with opposition leaders and discuss whether Maduro's successors would pay off the country's debts. Opposition leader Enrique Capriles, governor of the province of Miranda, went to Argentina, Brazil and Paraguay and met with heads of state there. Regional vibrations. In May 2016, Secretary General of the Organization of American States, Luis Almagro, called for an urgent meeting to start negotiations that could lead to the withdrawal of Venezuela's group. Almagro, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs in Uruguay, said that Maduro's refusal to participate in the referendum could violate the democratic charter that he launched in 2009 following a military coup in Honduras. Maduro said he was on the verge of being a little dictator. Maduro said that Almagro is full of hatred against Venezuela and accused him of working for the United States. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry urged the Maduro administration, which spoke at the OAS meeting in June, to release the political prisoners and open a referendum. The U.S. is Venezuela's largest trading partner, despite the conflicting relationship with the Maduro administration and sanctioning top Venezuelan authorities on human rights violations. In June 2016, U.S. Secretary of State Thomas Shannon traveled to Caracas to meet with senior management officials and opposition leaders to help promote constructive and meaningful dialogue. Under the current regime, inflation will continue to hurt consumers in Venezuela and possibly wreak political echoes. The real question is, when politics collapses, when Maduro's supporters dissolve their hands and say, "I prefer not to want the opposition." We are at a stage where governments are failing.